Within the demonic cult, power struggles were everywhere, and every major sect aimed to reach the level of dominance that the blood-refining hall had during the time of the black-hearted old man, despite the scheming behind the scenes. On the surface, everyone maintained a semblance of harmony. Before Baiduzi came here, the sect master of the venomous sect personally instructed him to find opportunities to investigate the Ghost King sect. What secrets did it hold? What was its true strength? Over the years, there had been rumors circulating in the demonic cult that the supreme scripture of the demonic cult, the Heavenly Book, had fallen into the hands of the Ghost King sect, and now, while the Heavenly Book was still missing, this vanished Qingyun cleansing radiance ring suddenly appeared. Baiduzi was shocked, feeling that the strength within the Ghost King sect was unfathomable. However, he showed a smile on his face, though it looked more awkward than joyful. Lord Ghost King jests. Nowadays, who doesn't know that the Ghost King sect is thriving? But this brother Long is indeed unfamiliar to us, and I would like to get to know him. The Ghost King glanced deeply at Baiduzi, his eyes shimmering. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "Brother Baiduzi, as time passes, we will surely meet again. You should know that 300 years ago, under the previous generation of the Ghost King, our sect had for great holy envoys, right?" Baiduzi's expression changed, but Duanmu Patriarch couldn't help but exclaim, "What? The Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise. These 4 individuals are still alive." The white-faced scholar smiled at the Ghost King, and they both turned to the crowd with a smile. "Greetings, everyone. I am the Azure Dragon, on the side of the righteous path." The reaction was not as intense, but Baiduzi and the others from the demonic cult were deeply moved. 300 years ago, when the Ghost King sect was just rising, besides the previous Ghost King, the foundation of the sect was these so-called for great holy envoys. Through numerous battles and struggles in the demonic cult, they had finally achieved today's situation. The strength of these 4 individuals could be imagined. Suddenly, the Azure Dragon side turned to the Ghost King and said, "After all, we are getting old. Look at the young people from the righteous path over there, each with a doubtful look on their faces. Most of them probably haven't heard of my name." The Ghost King smiled. "Brother Long, why worrying too much? The younger generation is inexperienced. They're just not familiar with your name yet. Given time, your name will surely resound throughout the world again." The Azure Dragon laughed heartily. In his laughter, there seemed to be a hint of melancholy as he glanced at his right hand as if there were some faint sorrow. Suddenly, there was a loud noise that startled everyone. They looked toward the source of the sound and saw that the stone-breaking staff from earlier had shot into the sky and was just now falling back down. The scene quieted down for a moment. On the righteous path side, most people frowned and remained vigilant. This resurgence of the demonic cult's strength had already exceeded expectations. Moreover, it seemed that there were more and deeper forces lurking in the shadows. On the side of the demonic cult, they were also wary. Duanmu Patriarch was somewhat better off as he had no sect or faction and was only close to the blood-sucking old demon. However, Baiduzi and the blood-sucking old demon were both important figures in the venomous sect. At this moment, they looked at each other in silence, deeply wary of the Ghost King sect. Only the Ghost King and the Azure Dragon stood there, composed. The Azure Dragon seemed to say something quietly, and the Ghost King smiled and shook his head. However, seemingly unintentionally, he glanced at Zhang Xiaofan. As the night grew deeper, the sea breeze howled in the distance. Amidst the vast sea, the inexplicable cries seemed to draw closer and clearer with each passing moment. Tiabai and King Song Taoist exchanged a glance, sensing each other's intention to retreat. "So are you?" coughed softly and whispered to King Song Taoist. "Senior brother King Song, the demon's power is overwhelming now. We'd better retreat for now and discuss with the sect master before making a decision. What do you think?" King Song pondered for a moment, then nodded decisively. "Sister Su is right." With that, he glanced at Tiabai, who nodded slowly. As King Song was about to speak, he suddenly remembered something and looked around, furrowing his brows. In a low voice, he asked, "Where is Yikai? Why haven't we seen him all night?" Hearing this, Chahao, who was standing beside him, stepped forward and said, "Master, when we came out just now, senior brother Z said he wasn't feeling well, so he didn't come out with us." King Song's face darkened, and he grunted, but he couldn't say anything in front of his disciples. He could only turn his head and was about to speak to the others from various sects like Fashing, Li Zun, and others, when suddenly, behind the crowd, a scream rang out, people stirred, and chaos ensued. Several young disciples from the righteous path who were standing behind were heavily injured, staggering out of the darkness, covered in blood, shouting hoarsely, "There are people from the demonic cult behind us." In the darkness of the ancient forest, countless eerie laughs seemed to echo. Pia Bai and others' faces changed drastically. Since the appearance of the Ghost King and others, everyone's attention had been drawn to those old monsters. However, the cunning of the demonic cult was manifold, and they had secretly surrounded the rear, launching a sudden attack. In just this moment, the forest shimmered with countless magical treasures flying out. The people of the righteous path began to wield their own magical treasures to counterattack, but they were taken by surprise, and the number of demonic cultists was far greater than they had imagined, putting them at a disadvantage. King Song's complexion grew dark, and he shouted loudly, leaping into the air. But before he could make any moves, Bai Duzi and Duanmu Patriarch both rushed forward. Bai Duzi laughed long and fiercely, his expression ferocious, shouting, "Dog Taoist, come and meet your end." King Song paused in midair, not daring to underestimate these old monsters, and turned to engage in battle. At the same time, a red light flashed under him, and Chia Bai acted, intercepting Duanmu Patriarch. "So are you?" Stood on the ground, her brows furrowed, a hint of worrying flashing across her beautiful face. At the moment, the situation was clearly disadvantageous for the righteous path, and there were still two unfathomable figures, like the Ghost King and the Azure Dragon, who hadn't made a move yet. Not to mention the countless demonic cultists lurking in the shadows. The situation was dire. At this moment of chaos, it seemed that there were demonic cult members everywhere, and lethal magical treasures flew out at any moment. The people of the righteous path were engaged in a fierce battle, with groans and cries echoing incessantly. Zhang Xiaofan held a burning stick, but hadn't acted yet, because Song Darren and Tialinger from Dafu Peak were concerned about his recent injury. They had shielded him in the middle. Thus, he was unscathed for the time being, but he felt the tension in the air, seeing the demonic cult's presence growing stronger around him, and the pressure on his fellow disciples increasing. Zhang Xiaofan felt anxious. Although he was a bit tired, he was otherwise unharmed and felt the urge to join the battle.